Welcome. I am Heritage Chief, and this is a reaction to TFM's solution to repeal the 19th and a number of other things. And my first reaction when he said about taking women voting rights away, I'm like, well, that's kind of sexist. For one thing, racism and sexism is basically discrimination to what you have no control over with what you were born, whether it be the color of skin or the gender, so to speak. And after his reasonings and his facts and a large data that's backing him up, I'm gonna have to kind of agree with TFM of taking the voting rights away from women. And I'm gonna first go into all the reasonings before I touch on to his solution, or how to basically get there to where we can repeal the 19th. But I want to first talk about all the reasonings why this even is coming up in the conversation. And for one thing, for voting rights, a big double standard between men and women is men have to sign up for the military draft. Women do not. And there's been, I'm sure you heard here and there about women being in the military and on the front lines and a number of other things. But there's a lot of problems with forcing women to sign up for the military draft. For one thing, there's biological differences. Obviously, not all women or not all men, but generally, men are physically stronger in every way possible. Yeah, you can have a couple girls in there that can do as many pull-ups or kick a guy's ass, but this isn't the point. This is a generality. And to even have half the women be able to be on the front lines, you have to lower the physical requirements significantly. Which the problem with that is then you weaken the military readiness. And the enemy does not care about whether you're a woman or a man. It is a dog-eat-dog world, and there's going to be bullets flying. And I definitely would not want a buddy of mine or a combatant in the same squad as me that is physically weak, where it could endanger somebody else's lives because they couldn't meet the requirements. And then here's another significant point for forced military draft, why it would not work for women, is if Congress ever deemed war on anybody, and let's say they got pregnant, well, you're not going to force pregnant women to fight. I mean, they're just going to be a liability, as depending on what term they're in or how long they've been pregnant. So that's an easy cop-out for women to skip out on being the front lines or being forced in the military draft. It's an easy way out. And then another significant problem with an easy cop-out is you put a lot of resources and training into an individual to be military ready, physically, mentally, to have the skills, and when it comes time to put your money where your mouth is, so to speak, to basically just throw it all out the window. In my eyes, it just wouldn't work, forcing women to be in the military draft. And these are one of the major reasons why TFM and I believe women shouldn't have the right to vote. Because if they don't have to fight for the country, why should they be able to vote to force all the men to fight for them? It doesn't make sense to me. And getting away from the military part and getting into the second part here, men are generally the net taxpayers in the country. So generally women are the tax receivers, whether it be food stamps, child support, welfare, whatever program that they have, low cost housing. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because women are generally the tax receivers. They don't produce as much as they receive or use, which creates the welfare state. Another problem is, jumping here to another thing, is obviously men realize the family court is definitely one-sided. You got child support and alimony. Alimony in itself is admitting that women can't take care of themselves. And then you have the Me Too movement, guilty until innocent, men's lives being destroyed. And all these things cannot be fixed. The welfare state, the family courts, child support, alimony, Me Too, guilty until proven innocent. None of these things can be fixed with the women being able to vote, because they will not give up their special privileges. And obviously one of the main things a lot of men hear is, well, I'm not like other women. Regardless whether a woman's like any other woman, the fact is the majority of women do use these tools all the time. And this is why you have the mgtow movement. And what do you do when the majority of the voters are the problem in this democratic process? And we can't have a real conversation because we're too worried about hurting people's feelings. The politicians won't do anything. The career politicians won't do anything because they don't want to lose any votes. So if any politician would to bring up these issues, it's basically career suicide. And back to my original definition of sexism and racism, you know, discrimination based on gender or race or color or whatever it may be. Maybe it doesn't have to be exactly repeal the 19th. Maybe another route would be to have only net taxpayers be able to vote. Some might jump to the conclusion, well, it's everybody's right to be able to vote. Well, not everybody. Illegal people can't vote, illegal immigrants or illegal aliens, depending on your preference. Prisoners can't vote, children can't vote. So there is definitely a line of who and who cannot vote. And I would strongly agree or advise on only allowing people who are net taxpayers be able to vote and our veterans, because they're definitely part of the process. And these are all the reasons why I see, or I can agree with TFM on how he came to his conclusion. And that's just a quick overall. I might miss a couple things. If TFM or for anybody sees anything else, maybe I missed something, maybe I'm wrong at a certain point, point it out. You know, I based my opinion on the facts that I can see, or my what I can observe. So here comes the interesting part. So how could we possibly take women's voting rights away when they're the majority of the voters? Because it would never fly. It's not gonna be. It's not. They're not gonna be like, oh yeah, just take our voting rights away. They're not gonna do that. They're gonna be kicking and screaming all the way. And a big part of this, with the child support and family court and alimony, the welfare state and everything else, and it all comes into feminism, which feminism from women basically, I mean, they basically destroyed the nuclear family. They lied to women saying that you can have it all. And they destroyed the gender relationship. And this is why MGTOW is growing, because of these things. And a big way of stepping in the right direction is repeal the 19th or change the voting basically to only allow veterans and net taxpayers vote. And back to my question, how could we possibly take women's voting rights away? TFM gave the example of Sweden, which is a real world example today happening in an extremely feminist country. Now, you might say, how is that even possible? Well, you got an 8% Muslim population in Sweden from basically them having open borders. And TFM calls it the fear factor, so to speak. And basically, they have their own courts, and they have their own Sharia courts, and the Sweden government will not go in there. It's a no-go zone. They won't, because the men of the Muslim population in Sweden will riot, destroy property, and fight. Hence the fear factor. And don't go in there unless you want your ass beat. You might not come back out. And this is where I want to ask TFM the details to his solution. Now, obviously we don't have a Muslim population over here. We have the MGTOW community growing, surely. But let's play hypothetical. Obviously we're at the stage right now of spreading the philosophy. But at what point of like-minded individuals agree on some sort of constitution to start like congregating, like living together to one area, to where they can impose this fear factor and take care of business, so to speak? And I don't know what percentage of the population it would have to be, or if it could even be a small group of 20, 50, or 150, or 300 people. So these are where the details, this is where I get lost, because I understand how the Muslims are doing it, but how could we replicate that in the United States of America over here? And if we would follow the Muslim example in Sweden, obviously there would have to be a certain amount of people, I don't know what that number is, to a certain area to where it would be a no-go zone, to where they would be like their own community. So that's what I would like. This is my response to TFM's solution. my first reaction and how I came to agree with him. I would like to hear from TFM, which is on a turd flinging monkey, and hear the details, basically like a blueprint or a business plan of how we could actually do this as an intellectual conversation or debate or whatever you want to call it. I'm just curious. I mean, it's easy to say just do what Muslims do, but how do we actually go about doing it? Like, would you have that setting? Would we go congregate in the city? Would we be out in the country? What could be the possible counters that the government could take? Would they bring in SWAT teams? That's when I say about you need a certain number of people, because I'm sure if you only have like 5 people, that this shit ain't gonna fly. You could all get thrown in jail real quick. But if you got 300 people, 1,000 people, 8% of the population, it's a whole new ball game. And I believe, correct me anybody, I believe major revolutions, you only need a small percentage of the population to basically rule the roost, so to speak. I'm not sure if it's 10% or 12% or 20% or 8%, but I'd definitely like to hear numbers, a plan, and I'm just curious to see how it would work out, or if it's even possible to do such a thing. Well, appreciate you getting to the end of the video. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to reading the comments and the responses. Thanks. Bye.